Thank you for clicking on this Rate the Movies video. I am Martin Prevost. I feel a little weird because this is a second take, because my phone rang while I was filming my original review. So I'm a little off kilter, so if I continue to be off kilter and talk like I've already said something, it's probably because I said it in the other version. So, last week we talked Bonnie and Clyde, a classic film that I'd never seen before that I finally watched, and I really didn't care for it. This week we have the opposite of classic film I've never seen before that I actually really kind of enjoyed. And this week we're talking about Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Great title. Great title. This is by Stanley Kubrick. I've never seen the movie before until just a little while ago. Mainly because I'm not a huge Kubrick person. I like The Shining, but I never got 2001, Eyes Wide Shut, or Clockwork Orange. I just never got those movies. I also watched them when I was a young kid, so that could be part of it. I found out sometimes if you rewatch a movie as an adult, you understand it more, and the quality of the movie improves. So I decided I've always wanted to check out Dr. Strangelove, although Kubrick, because Kubrick makes long and weird films. So I was afraid this was a long and weird film. It is a weird film, but weird in the good way. But it's not long. It's only an hour and a half, which I did not realize until I finally said, you know what, I'm going to watch it. I bought a copy of it because I found it at a store. I bought a copy of Dr. Strangelove, and I decided to watch it. And then I found out it was an hour and a half. So good job for me. This is a classic movie, but I think, much like most people, we only know certain bits of it. Like, we know Slim Pickens riding the nuclear device down like a cowboy with his hat. We know Peter Sellers playing Dr. Strangelove in the wheelchair, who's making the Nazi salute. And we know it has something to do with the Cold War. That's about it. That's what I knew going into this movie. So a lot of what happened in this movie really did take me by surprise. Because I didn't actually know the beat progression of this film. Even though it is considered a classic, I didn't actually know the beat progression. So I got to experience that like I didn't know anything. Because really I didn't. Because when you see a movie called Dr. Strangelove, you expect Dr. Strangelove to be a big character in the movie, when in reality he has two scenes. And he doesn't show up until about the hour mark of the movie. Is when Dr. Strangelove finally appears. He's apparently in, you have to use quotations, because Peter Sellers plays 3 different characters in this movie. He is in other scenes, you just aren't aware he's there. Like, there isn't any light shined on him, because he's in the Pentagon War Room, on the big round table, and he's just one of the guys there, is Dr. Strangelove. It's not until he's actually talked to that we realize, oh, Dr. Strangelove is here, and has been here for the length of this movie. This is a Cold War movie. That's what it's about. It's about America and Russia. It's a very interesting movie. I very much enjoyed it. You open up with Peter Sellers in his first character, who is a British officer who is kind of an exchange program working for the Americans. He gets a call from the chief of his Air Force base telling him to notify all of their air wings who are up in the air, who are within 2 hours flight from Russia, that they are to go to Code R, or Project R, Protocol R, it's R. And that they are to confiscate all civilian radios from the base. And he has a list. He has a list of the people who have radios. So, it seems like a pretty normal opening. Looking back, now that I know what happens, I get it. I get what this was setting up, and I kind of want to rewatch it just to see it there, because you learn later in the movie that the general is crazy. He is nutballs crazy, and I think that's the request to confiscate all civilian radios is that showing it early in the film in that first scene. So the revelation, you go back going, oh, that's why he demanded all radios be taken, because what he's about to do, the radios would totally give it up for what he's about to do. So the command is given to all of the planes, and they decode it, and they begin to go through their procedures, because they have the message, they made sure the message was real, and they got confirmation on the message, because it's all going through this Air Force base that has Crazy General, who's telling people, yeah, no, this is right, this is right, this is right. So they switch their devices, their radios, to a device that will only accept messages with a code, with a prefix code in front of it, that only the general knows. This eventually is, people in Washington eventually find out what's about to happen is a bunch of nuclear bombers are heading for Russia within 2 hours to bomb the hell out of Russia, which will then, trigger Russia to respond, by bombing the hell out of America. Peter Sellers in his... You almost have to take this movie in 3 separate chunks, because it's 3 different stories being told. You have the stuff in the Pentagon, you have the stuff up in one of the bombers, and then you have the stuff with the general. But Peter Sellers eventually realizes, as the English officer finds a radio, turns it on, realizes it's still broadcasting like normal radio frequencies, which, if there was an emergency, because Plan R is in case Washington is destroyed, it would allow lower-level people on the totem pole to be able to activate response. So if the president isn't there to order the response, somebody can order the response. And that's why he's taking this route, because it doesn't require a presidential backing. Basically, sending out this message tells all of the bombers Washington's destroyed. So Sellers goes to confront the general, saying, hey, this is a big misunderstanding. We need to call our guys back. I need the prefix code so I can call them back. And this is where you learn the general has gone crazy and believes that if he starts this by having the bombers go out, that Washington will have no choice but to follow through. They'll have to send more soldiers. They'll have to send more missiles. They'll have to try to take out Russia right now because he set it up. This then leads us to the White House, where they're in not the White House, the Pentagon, where they're in the war room. We meet Peter Sellers, number 2, who is the President of the United States, talking to General, I want to say Buck Flowers, but I feel like that's wrong. It could be Buck Flowers. But he's talking to one of his generals. I mean, there's a huge table full of guys, but it's really Sellers and this one general, who is basically initially saying, hey, we can't contact the dude who set all this in motion. We can't contact him. We can't reach him. His base is on lockdown. We're going to have to send soldiers to get him on the phone, which is what they end up doing. And he then slowly but surely makes his way into the argument of, well, since this has already started, we should just escalate the matters. But the president won't hear it. He decides to call for the Russian ambassador and makes a phone call to the prime minister of Russia, the Tsar, who's ever in charge of Russia, to try to explain this away so that massive death doesn't occur. They learn that Russia has a doomsday device, which basically can't be turned off, because turning it off triggers it. And so if these bombs, any of the bombs drop, it'll trigger this device, which will basically leave the world inhabitable within 2 months, I think they said. It's either 2 months or 2 years. So now the president is really like, hey, you have all rights to shoot down our men. We'll give you anything we've got on where these planes are, so you can shoot them down, so you don't have to, so this doesn't happen. While this is all going on, we have Slim Pickens up in the plane. He is the captain. He's also got James Earl Jones up there, which is pretty cool, as they are the bombers. They're going through their stuff, opening up like if they have to bail on the mission, or like if the plane can't make it back to safe ground, they're going through what's in the package for them to survive in Russia. which has the greatest thing, one of the best sight gags I've seen in a long time. They're each issued a Bible, but it's like it's the tiniest Bible you can imagine, but it also has Russian translation in it. So it's this small, thick thing that is a Bible and Russian translations. It is an amazing sight gag. And they're going through it, and they are targeted by a missile. They're one of the planes that is trying to be shot down by the Russians. The missile hits them, but not enough to take them down, just enough to damage a lot of their systems, including their radio. So now they cannot receive any transmissions to abort. Eventually, our insane general is... There's a war going on outside between the military and the men on his base, who all believe Russia's attacking, and that the soldiers are Russian, and they're shooting at each other. He is shooting at them. I have friends who would facepalm themselves with one of these scenes. I thought it was hilarious. They'd facepalm themselves because he has one of those giant guns that needs to be chain-fed the bullets. It has the belt of bullets. And Peter Sellers' character is chain-feeding the bullets, and he's holding it two-handed. So he's got the barrel in one hand, and he's holding the butt of the gun in the other, shooting it. And I'm sitting there going, that man should have a real burnt hand, because that thing's got to be getting hot. It's got to be burning his hand. And I just thought it was funny that he has no reaction to it. I don't think anyone thought that he should. So the fact that he has none came off as a joke to me. Eventually, the air officers surrender, and Peter Sellers continues to try to talk his general into, hey, you should just give me the prefix code. They're coming in here. You should give me the prefix code. But the general is so crazy, believing that fluorination is a communist trick, and that the bodily fluids are what the Russians are trying to destroy. That he ends up shooting himself in the bathroom because he doesn't believe he can stand up to torture. Because he believes he's going to be tortured for the prefix codes. Because I don't think he's fully believing that these are Americans attacking. He still thinks they're Russians. So now Peter Sellers is looking at a notebook that the dude has been scribbling on, trying to figure out the prefix code, when a soldier shows up who has apparently been told nothing other than the president wants to speak to the general. Get the general on the phone. The general is dead, and he keeps threatening to shoot Peter Sellers, who's now figured out the prefix code, and just needs to tell somebody so they can recall these bombers. His story ends... A lot of these stories, and I think Slim Pickens has the only story that actually has a real ending, because he finally talks the soldier into letting him make a phone call at a public phone, but he doesn't have the change to call the White House, and they won't accept the collect call. So he tells him to shoot a Coke machine, and the dude tells him that if he can't get through to the White House, he'll be responsible to Coca-Cola for damaging the machine. And that's where his story ends, is the soldier getting sprayed in the face with Coke, and Sellers waiting for the change so he can make the call. You do find out he made the call. They were able to recall the planes. It happens real quick. And then... Except they can't recall Slim Pickens' plane because everything's damaged. He can't receive the return. He's flying solo because of the damage. He's under Russian radar, and they're afraid that he's still going to set off the Doomsday device. If he succeeds, he's going to set off the Doomsday device. And our Buck Flowers, I'm just going to call him Buck Flowers. I don't think that's the character's name, but I'm calling him Buck Flowers. I have my phone right here, and I have the IMDb still pulled on it, so I can totally... Buck was right. He is a Buck. He is Buck Turgensen. General Buck Turgensen. So, Buck Turgensen, I don't know why Buck Flowers is something else. Buck Turgensen, is trying to hide the fact that he believes that, a U.S. Air Force pilot is way better than the entire Russian Air Force, and therefore there's no way he can fail in making this drop. Except they're leaking fuel, and they're not going to make it. They're going to an alternate place. This is where they find out that they can't open the bomb bay doors to drop the nuclear device, and Slim Pickens decides to go and investigate it himself. Of course, this is where we get the iconic shot. I always thought there was something wrong, and he willingly rode the bomb down, and that's what the shot of him, riding the missile like a horse, waving his cowboy hat, which he kept in a safe. I missed that. He kept his cowboy hat in a safe. He has a safe on the plane, and he kept the cowboy hat in it. Because that's where you keep your cowboy hat. Safety for the cowboy hat. But no, it's because the bomb bay doors won't open. He finally gets them open, but it's right as they're over the target, so the payload just drops, and he just happens to be sitting on it. So he just is excitedly waving his hat in the air as he's fallen to his death. And now we're back at. That's why I say that one has an ending. The payload fall. He's the main character of the airplane, and he's done. He has a full story. We then go back to the Pentagon, where they're discussing. Cause I think they're pretty sure. I don't think they know that Slim Pickens delivered a payload, but not to the target he was supposed to. He picked a different target that was closer that he could make. So I think they're expecting the Doomsday device is going to go off. And Strangelove then comes up with this great idea of hiding a couple of thousand humans in mine shafts. And that a computer can pick who gets to go in the mine shaft. And that monogamy has to go out the window. Because it's got to be 10 to 1, 1 man for 10 women. The women have to be sexually attractive. And this entire time, Strangelove's, one of his arms that has a black glove on it, seems to be functioning on its own. Like, he has no control over it. It keeps trying to do the heil. I'm sorry, that was a reflex from talking about it. He kept trying to do the heil. At one point he's biting his own hand to get it to stop and obey him. And he's talking about this, and all of a sudden it turns into, well, we need to make sure we have more people than the Russians will have from their mines, because they're going to think of the same mine thing. We got to make sure they're not going to try to destroy our mines. They might try to sneak attack our mines. And all of a sudden it became, instead of the nuclear gap, which is one power gaining a new weapon over the other, and them trying to close the gap, or the peace gap, or the space gap, which are all mentioned in this movie as the gaps that they're trying to fight over. It then becomes the mine gap. We can't lose the mine gap. There's a great ending, and Strangelove finally stands up out of his wheelchair, and this is the final line of the movie. Mein Führer, I can walk, and then it goes to a montage of nuclear explosions. And that's how the movie ends. The original ending apparently was supposed to be a pie fight. Apparently, somehow, someway, a pie fight was supposed to break out between everyone in the war room. I don't know what that was supposed to accomplish, or how. I'm trying to figure out how you get from Strangelove standing to a pie fight, because it just abruptly cuts. It feels like the idea was Russia launched, and everything got destroyed. I think that was the idea of the ending. But it was supposed to be a pie fight, and I wish, I know you can find, clips of it online, but I don't think the full scene exists. It might even just be stills at this point of this pie fight. For some reason, pies show up in the war room, and it just makes me think of the Futurama episode, and this is probably where it got the idea from, when Harold Zoid is making his movie, and all of a sudden he says, "Somebody throw a pie!" Yeah, pies were supposed to show up, and it was supposed to be a pie fight. I really enjoyed this movie. It was a very fun hour and a half. It was intriguing. Peter Sellers does a really good job playing the three roles through his voice. The makeup isn't that much different. You can kind of tell. You know it's Sellers each time. There isn't that much makeup going on him. I think, I could be wrong, I think he also did want to play the Slim Pickens role. But it was decided not to have him do 4 parts, or he wasn't available for when that stuff was going to be filmed. Because otherwise he just does, because he's in 2 of the 3 stories that make up this movie, so it's kind of weird that he's not in the third, that he's not on the plane as well playing a character. But yeah, overall, I recommend this movie. This was a lot of fun. Like, I just kind of quickly went through the plot, but trust me, is the movie worth watching. There are bits and jokes I totally missed. General Buck Turgeon loves pointing at the big board in the war room, and I don't know why, but I found every time he said that just to be hilarious. I loved it. I loved him constantly talking about the big board. Yeah, it's a good time. I really liked this movie. I was surprised how much I liked this movie, because I thought I'd enjoy it. I didn't think I'd be raving about it. Like, I did. I really enjoyed Dr. Strangelove. I highly recommend, if you've never seen it, check it out. It was released through, it's a Sony picture. I don't know who Sony streams through right now. But yeah, definitely check it out. If you haven't, check out Dr. Strangelove. It's a good movie. This is probably my favorite Stanley Kubrick film. I don't know. It's just, I can see how this movie might have at one point, like, the Zucker brothers might have made this movie had it come out at a different point in time, because Dr. Strangelove was released on the cast list. It's because this is a steelbook. I have no back information. I honestly can't just look at it and pull information. 1964 is when this movie was made, and it's kind of is the slapsticky. It's a prelude to the slapsticky kind of comedy that you would get in The Naked Gun and Airplane, toned down. Like, it's not to that height, but it has some jokes, such as the super tiny Bible, or a dude getting sprayed in the face by a Coke machine. Also, this movie has some of the most hilarious one-sided phone conversations, because every time somebody's on the phone, whether it's the president talking to the Russians, or at the beginning when Buck Turgeon, his secretary, gets a call for him, or Buck gets a call from his secretary who's waiting for him to come back so they can continue their rendezvous. It's all played for laughs, and it's all great laughs. Like, those guys really, really knew how to play the one-sided phone, because you don't hear the other side of the conversation, so it's just them reacting to it and talking, and they're just so good at it. It makes those scenes a lot funnier. I really liked it. Check it out, Dr. Strangelove. Alright. So I have 1 week left talking about these movies that are considered classics, but I've never seen before. I'm going to move forward to what is considered a modern classic, I guess, at this point. The word classic might be a little... It's hard to say. It's a very popular movie, and that's kind of what becomes classics, are popular movies. I'm going to watch Top Gun. I've never seen Top Gun. I have no interest in Top Gun. But I'm going to watch Top Gun, and then I'm going to review Top Gun. So come back next week for me to talk about Top Gun. I'm not Top Gun. Alright, I'm Martin Primos. This is Rank the Movies. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any content. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you later.